It is that time of the week again when we review all of the ways in which the media covers themselves in glory. And joining us once again to do exactly that is Katie Halper. She's host of The Katie Halper Show and co-host of the Useful Idiots podcast. Great to see you, Katie.
You too.
So we have a great clip here from Fox News, which falls definitely into the category of please don't threaten me with a good time, where they're talking about progressive efforts to pressure the Biden administration to actually do things even if they don't have control of the Senate. Let's take a look at that. This is Fox and Friends.
You know, what's interesting is this group, which also helped AOC craft the Green New Deal, they're appealing to Joe Biden directly. So they sent him the 7-page manifesto. And keep in mind, remember it was a couple of months ago, Joe said, if elected, he would be the most progressive president in history. Well, they are suggesting Joe Biden could actually become the FDR of the 21st century. And so what they're saying is open up the Fed. Let's get all this money for manufacturing. And we'll turn factories into mask factories. And we'll turn car companies into car companies that only make electric cars. And we're going to build charging stations everywhere so everybody can drive one of those things. And we're going to upgrade homes to be more energy efficient.
Energy efficient? How could they, Katie?
I know. Did you see the other guy's face, the guy who isn't talking? I forget what, all Fox people are the same to me, so I forget his name, but he's like rolling his eyes every time something amazing is mentioned. It's like the better things are, the more his eyes roll back into his head. But yeah, and that's I also just side note, this is kind of superficial, but I love how they try so hard to vilify AOC. And she's kind of like, if you're on the right, she's like a tragically photogenic person. And so they try so hard to find these photos of her where she looks angry, but she's just like always looks great in photos. So they keep showing this one photo of her looking like pissed off, but she doesn't even look bad there. I mean, anyway, I feel bad for them. But yeah, it's a great, I mean, if they're like doing, that's probably the best PR for Biden I've seen, right? Or at least it's giving him an excuse, I think, to actually do the right things, even from the right. I don't know if they know how to oppose him. Although to be fair, what's interesting about this clip is that they kind of sound like MSNBC or CNN.
How so?
Well, because I'm just thinking like that they also, I mean, there's a part of this clip that's right before this where they're saying that Biden can't do this. I mean, these are all things that Biden can do without Congress, right? These are all executive orders. And it's just interesting to see that they're kind of like angrier. They're able to oppose this from a policy perspective as opposed to CNN or MSNBC or I guess like blue check punditry who has to pretend that it's not doable. But this is an example where they know it's doable. They're acknowledging that. So it'll be interesting to see how the liberal media spins this.
Well, I like at the beginning of the segment, Ainsley's the one who is setting it up. And she's trying to read it in the like shocked and scared voice. Yeah. Like they put out this memo that says Joe Biden could create millions of good paying jobs. Like in the scare voice. And then you're like, wait, what? That's supposed to be a bad thing?
Yeah.
I don't get it. But it also shows how disconnected the narrative around AOC and the progressive left is and how scary and terrible they are versus the reality that a lot of the policies, especially on economics that they're fighting for, are extraordinarily popular.
Right.
So when you actually try to drill in on like why they're bad and get into the policies, you end up looking ridiculous like they do.
Yeah, right. And they also at the beginning, they did this thing where they pretend that she's the reason that like the left didn't do as well as they wanted to, which is something that people love saying with absolutely no evidence whatsoever. And so, of course, they do that. But yeah, oh my God, that is so scary. Imagine if we have good paying jobs where people make masks. What could be worse than masks? This is the time of a pandemic. That is so scary. How could you create masks during an airborne pandemic?
And you just know when Trump was floating that idea, they were like, way to go, Mr. President. You're an extraordinary leader. This is exactly what the American people need.
Yeah. I wonder if they're mad because they know that it's good. Like, I wonder if they're extra mad and that's why they're so pissed off because they're realizing that there's very little standing in the way of getting this done because these are executive issues as opposed to things that you need Congress's coordination on. So, yeah, I feel bad for them, honestly.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, we'll see what Biden does, right? Because, of course, what's going to be interesting is to see if he wiggles out of this, which I kind of expect he will.
So I was just looking there was another tweet that, here it is. So Sunrise Movement rightfully called out Joe Biden on his pick of Cedric Richmond, and this sort of transitions into the way that the liberal media covers things in not such a better way than Fox News does.
Yeah.
And so Sunrise, called this hiring of Cedric Richmond a betrayal because he's the top recipient or one of the top recipients of oil, gas, and chemical money, even though his district is the most polluted in the entire country. They have cancer rates that are 50 times the national norm because of chemical waste in their district. I mean, it's just something that he has not said one word about as their representative in Congress. So rightfully, and he's put into a position where he's supposed to be liaison to the climate movement. So it's not like this is some separate and apart thing. So they rightfully describe this as a betrayal. And here's how Jonathan Martin of the New York Times characterized this. He said, this is a 2021 preview. Sunrise is picking a fight right from the start with the most influential black staffer in the White House who represented an energy-heavy district. Sunrise is the one picking the fight here, Katie.
Yeah, I actually tweeted 2021 preview, media, NY Times is picking a fight from the start with an amazing climate justice organization run by the way, whose executive director is a woman of color. So I don't know how he can be picking a fight from the start with a woman of color, just to apply their logic, right?
Yes.
I almost appreciate what an overt weaponization of identity politics this is. Like usually it's a bit more subtle, but this is pretty great. And it's interesting, Krystal, because we knew they were going to do this because a couple months ago there was a piece talking about how the Sunrise and Justice Dems wanted Biden to sign a pledge that he wouldn't appoint any cabinet people who were from Wall Street or who are corporate lobbyists. And then you have Representative Meeks come in and say, oh, that's terrible. How could you throw people of color? How could you throw diversity under the bus? If you commit to that, that's going to mean that we don't have as diverse a cabinet, which is so offensive because the implication there is that the only qualified people for the cabinet who are of color are corporate shills. It's so offensive and it's so illogical. And now we see that they're using that very excuse, right? It's like, how dare you go after someone black who's historically has ruined the lives of black people, by the way, P.S., because people don't know what environmental racism is. They should Google that. But obviously, all of these things are bad for everyone and disproportionately affect people of color. And we know this. This is what drives me crazy. Hearing the Democrats at the DNC say again and again that we have to tackle structural racism and systemic racism. And what do? They don't get behind climate change. What do? They don't get behind Medicare for all, even though, as they pointed out themselves during the entire DNC, COVID disproportionately affects black people. So what's their solution? Nothing. Their solution is to not embrace Medicare for all, which is one of the biggest tools in dismantling that.
Well, Elizabeth Warren did put BLM in blocks behind her at the DNC.
You're right. Yeah,
and that was a powerful moment. So I don't want to invisibilize that.
Yeah, we have to center that. We have to center that. So
absolutely.
If we combine the blocks with the street, that's all we need. From the classrooms to the streets. Yeah, mission accomplished. Yeah, symbolism. Yeah.
Katie, so great to see you as always. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye.
We'll have more Rising for you after this.